Welcome to LSB Feaster's Radio Aircheck and Classic TV channel.
The most music on
77 WABC.
WABC, New York.
Ingram 20th. Congratulations, Dan.
Brag again.
WABC.
20 years I've been here, and 20 years I've watched my sideburns get gray, and hair by agonizing hair. But I don't believe in the mirror. I think the mirror lies. I do think the mirror lies, because somewhere in my head I'm about, I used to be 18 for a long time. Now I'm somewhere around 29. You really want to know? I'm 46. I started here when I was 26, 20 years ago in 1961. And one of the things I wanted to say before I went any further in the show, I suppose more properly this belongs at the end, but there's some other things I want to do, is I would like to just take a moment to pay respect to the memory of a dear friend, the man who hired me in New York. And frankly, if you listen to the tape that I gave him from which he hired me, I'm amazed that he heard anything in there worth hiring, because I listened to it today, and it's pretty poor. The late Hal Neal. He's responsible for me being here. You're responsible for me staying here, but he's the guy who brought me in, gave me the latitude to do some things that, a lot of people wouldn't really like to have happen on their radio station in those days. He let me have a little bit of room to fool around with, and it made the difference, because I think the one thing that I did in those days that I like to think I do now is try to talk to you honestly and openly and say something that might be maybe a little hoo-hoo-hoo, but nothing that's going to hurt anybody. And he had the courage and, I guess, the foresight to let me do that. If it hadn't been for Hal Neal, I'd still be somewhere in Kansas City. Probably making a good buck and having a good time, but not at this level. Hal, wherever you are, I love you. You are my friend. Thank you. Now let's go back to 1972. Sullivan, the number one tune in 1972 on WABC.
WABC's Dan Ingram.
I always felt that WABC's Dan Ingram meant that I was in the clutches of this station somehow. They almost did once. They got mad at me for this, and I'm going to play it again because I think we can say this on the air. At least I hope we can. Ever since Archie Bunker started saying G's instead of G and hell and damn and all those words, well, I think I'm over my hell and damn quotient for the hour. I better cool it. They're only allowed one. But I'll tell you the story of this, and you'll hear it again. And this is what happened on the air, because I goofed and said what I was trying not to say. See, the thing was, you weren't supposed to say that word, which, it had to do with fecal matter. And I was in my agent's office, and there was a lady who has since passed away, bless her soul, name of Meryl Pecker, and she did auditioning for commercials. And we were sitting there talking to each other, and the joke was nobody's named Meryl, which was supposedly funny, those cynical people in showbiz. And then I said to myself, well, what happens if Meryl Pecker married Joe Cocker? She'd be Meryl Pecker Cocker. And then I said, how about if she married the heir to the Smucker's Jam fortune? She'd be Meryl Pecker Cocker Smucker. And it went on like that. It was all very funny and very innocent and kind of risque, but not, nothing really out and out bad. And that got on my mind as I was walking over here, because my agent used to be on Madison Avenue. He's down on, he's the best agent in the world. His name is Don Buchwald, and if you're in the business and want a great agent, he's the guy who can get you to stardom, because he's great. Anyway, I walked from his old office on Madison Avenue over to 6th. I was thinking about Smucker's Jam and Schick House Franks and other words like that, and this is what happened, and I blew it.
News before the hour, a service of ABC, the most music on WABC, New York.
WABC. Dan Ingram. Go, go, go.
I had a what do you call a nightmare last night, and I dreamt that we had feedback is what I dreamt. So we do. I dreamt that I got a commercial, and the manufacturers of Smucker's Jam and Schick House Meats and Schlitz Beer all got together and formed a corporation called the Schick House. I said it wrong, didn't I? I tried. Well, it's been a nice career.
I want want to tell you I got cold. And I hate to tell you where I got cold. But took a couple days, stuck my head in the next day, and when I came on the air, I did a whole bunch of tongue twisters just to prove I could do them. You know, like Theophilus thistle, a successful thistle, sifting its syphil of unsifted thistles, thrust 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. See the down sifting a syphil of unsifted thistles, thrust not 3,000 thistles through the thick of thy thumb. Success to the successful thistle sifter. Well, I can say that, but I couldn't say, I'm not going to say it because I'll blow it. Well, let's move on in terms of music. Let's get up to 1973, and one of the prettiest number one tunes of all. Incidentally, I must remind you again, this weekend we're bringing you the songs that reached number one in New York all weekend long on New York's radio station, our number one song weekend. And this was the number one song of 1973.
Ingram, WABC.
Drumming my pain with his fingers, singing my life with his words.
We're on the telephone right now with the man who has been somewhat responsible for my fortunes over the years. His name is Don Buchwald. And Don, you're on the air.
Oh, me?
You on right on the very electric radio theater, the Ingram thing.
I can't believe that. I'm really touched by this broadcast. You know, the accolades from all your fellow workers there and the whole thing. And I just want to say I really respect you now more than ever. And because of that, our company is going to reduce their commission to 10% starting Monday.
Wait a minute. You're only supposed to have been taking 10% all these years.
Oh, but I blew it.
Oh. Hey, Don, thanks for calling.
You're terrific.
Good talking to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. He's a nice man. He's not only a very talented man, but he's a kind of an agent that can sit down and talk with people very rationally and bilk them. It's wonderful. He's a good chap. All right, there's something very, very special that I want to play for you, but first I want to do the record that started the whole disco craze, which is an interesting milestone in our career here at WABC. It was probably the first really, truly disco-type record. It was by the Hughes Corporation, and it was the number one tune in 1974.
Dan Ingram.
Yeah, the Hughes Corporation. I always thought of a derriere when I thought, I don't know why, but it seemed like Howard Hughes was about to sit down when I heard it. Oh, yes, I remember this jingle. We used to use this a lot we had it for about 2 years, then we dropped it for some reason. I don't think the general manager liked it or something, some reason like that. It was just an idea I had, and somebody recorded it, so I used it, and this is the way it sounded.
Dan Ingram Electric Radio Theater is on the
It was dull, come to think of it. It was really going too far. I am a disc jockey. My parents, both of them, are musicians, and they live in Malvern, Long Island, and like I said, I went to Lindner Place School as a youngster, about 7 years old when we moved there, and I remember very vividly what time we moved there because my dad was up in the attic. He was putting in some insulation, and it was December 7th, and the news came over about Pearl Harbor, and he stood up and hit his head on a roof beam. He was very disturbed. And I thought after all these years of being a disc jockey at one time, a couple years back, that since my dad was a musician and since he used to sing with a lot of bands, that I ought to play one of his records. So I got hold of his record of a tune called By a Waterfall. And the record was cracked, and I took it home, and I had a studio at the time. De-ticked it, as they say, which means putting it on tape at a very fast speed and then cutting out the little clicks and pops and tried to make it good and re-equalized it. I even put it into a splitter and made stereo out of it just for laughs. But anyway, I took the record and I brought it in one day, and this is what happened at the close of that show. Take you back to 1933.
I'm calling you. We can share it all beneath a ceiling of blue. We'll spend a
and his orchestra with the vocal stylings of Johnny Ingram. This is Dan Ingram speaking. That's my dad, by the way. Good night.
WABC, New York.
This is news from American Contemporary Radio, and I'm Ed Kane in New York.
Yeah, he sings pretty damn good, I'll tell you. That's my dad, Johnny Ingram, who, well, I don't know. He hung around with all the guys in the big bands and Tommy Dorsey and all those people, and he managed to get me out of harm's way long enough to let me grow up. And I know he's listening. Love you, Pappy. Now then, we were about to go back into the years, where were we up to? 76, was it, Rick?
76, the things we can remember easily, I think.
Yeah. Rick James is here, has been doing yeoman service with all kinds of interesting information. What do we have?
Well, I remember the 15th anniversary, a little party down the hall.
Yeah.
And July 3rd of 1976, we were on the eve of what I think had to be the most glorious 4th of July in anyone's memory, any place, any time. An event so big with the tall ships in the harbor and everything else that the city's financial problems were forgotten for a moment. President Ford joined in the celebration here. The year 76 began with the PLO being seated at the UN in January. The Senate Intelligence Committee reports that the FBI, CIA, Army Intelligence, and other agencies have been illegally snooping into the affairs of private citizens. In June of 76, the U.S. ambassador to Lebanon was assassinated over there as problems flared in that nation that would continue through current times. On July 4th, while the U.S. celebrates the bicentennial, Israel stages the raid on Entebbe to rescue 103 hostages held by pro-Arab hijackers. This was the summer of Legionnaire's disease in Philadelphia. 29 Legionnaires died after their convention there. In New York City, the first aerial tramway ever opened connecting Manhattan and Roosevelt Island.
For a brief time, anyway.
It broke down 5 minutes later.
That's right. It's been hanging. Have you seen it hanging there? It looks awful. That's a shame.
The cables began snapping.
I almost bought an apartment on that island, and a friend of mine who lived there advised me against it, and I thank him to this day. Thank you, Brian, if you're listening.
1977. A fellow who went around the country the year before saying, "Hi, my name is Jimmy, I want to be president," actually became president. On January 21st, one day after taking office, Mr. Carter pardoned the Vietnam draft evaders. January 30th, TV history was made. The miniseries Roots attracted 130 million viewers, and that was on ABC TV. A second return to power in China. He stayed there this time. The Gang of Four was purged. In the fall of 77, a crowded field of Democrats run for mayor of New York. There were a bunch of them. Mayor Abe Beame is retired initially by the voters, and a primary runoff is necessary then between the top two vote-getters, Ed Koch and Mario Cuomo. By 78, Ed Koch became mayor of New York City. He said it's the first of 3 terms that he'll serve in that office. On March 15th in Italy, terrorism once again spreads. Former Premier Aldo Moro is kidnapped. He is found murdered on May 9th. The Red Brigade's terrorist organization taking credit for that. On March 16th of 78, the Senate approved the treaty that will give Panama the Panama Canal. May 28th, we were kind of shocked. The first-class postage stamp went up to 15 cents. It's now at 18. They're clamoring for 20. July 26th, the world's first test tube baby was born. Doesn't seem like that long ago.
Yeah.
On August 6th, Pope Paul VI dies. September 28th, Pope John Paul I dies just 34 days after taking office. On September 17th of 78, the Camp David Accord is unveiled. Israel and Egypt signing the documents called the Framework for Peace after 13 days with President Carter at Camp David. On November 20th, one of the big stories of the decade, the tragedy at Guyana, 911 bodies found at the Reverend Jim Jones People's Temple Settlement. In 79, problems that we're going to hit here started. The Shah fled Iran. By February 1st, the Ayatollah Khomeini was in power. On February 2nd, Patty Hearst was convicted of bank robbery charges. She did not serve time. She was freed under a clemency order. On March 28th of 79, conservatives won in England. Margaret Thatcher, the new prime minister there. April 18th, a day that will live in infamy perhaps, Lee Marvin ordered to pay $104,000 in the first palimony suit.
Is he still carrying that on? I think he said he's going to the Supreme Court with it, didn't he?
It's still making its way. That's the case.
He's a rough old bird. I want to mess with him.
That's what Michelle said. May 10th.
He said that about her, too.
May 10th, the second big gasoline crunch hits. It was 2 years ago. We were thinking about vacation, but had no gas to get there. States began the odd-even rationing. May 25th, 260 75 people died as a DC-10 crashed on takeoff from O'Hare in Chicago. July 17th of 79, the House Committee finds there was a conspiracy in the JFK assassination. They never really said what they thought it was, though. In the fall of 79, the remains of 2 hurricanes moved through New Jersey, parts of New York State, heavy rains, flooding, lots of property damage around here. And November 4th of 79, U.S. hostages were taken in Iran. 1980, we started the spring with a nice transit strike. What a mess that was. In the fall, of course, of last year, Ronald Reagan winning a landslide victory over Jimmy Carter, and it appeared the nation had turned conservative. We're preoccupied much of 1980 with a hostage crisis in Iran. By fall, the entire area is aware of a water crisis because of the drought around New York. On to this year, which I guess
Kind of brings us up to date, doesn't it?
Sure. We had the hostages freed on January 20th as President Carter left office. In March, and I hope this doesn't signal a cycle. We've seen cycles of violence. The attempt on President Reagan's life in Washington, he was shot in the chest.
Oh, yeah.
His Secretary Jim Brady shot through the brain. Secret Service agent and D.C. cop also injured there. Then in May, perhaps even more shocking, strangely, we've become accustomed, sadly, to this type of violence in this country, but an attempt was made on the life of the Pope. Pope John Paul II gunned down in St. Peter's Square. He was in the hospital for about a month left, and he's back in the hospital again with a virus problem growing from all that. And what may turn out to be one of the big political stories of this year, we'll wait and see. A coalition of conservative Democrats team up with minority Republicans in the House to score several successive victories for President Reagan over the liberal House leadership. Then in June, the baseball strike hit, and we learned the Columbus minor league baseball team is called the Clippers.
And our engineer, Bob Horvath, who thought he had it on Cushy City, because he got the duty to go do the Yankees games. Well, first of all, he was down in Lauderdale with down there during spring training, and he had a good time, from what I understand. And now, he's supposed to be in New York most of the time, but all of a sudden he's living in Cleveland.
Columbus.
Cleveland's bad enough. Columbus even worse.
Now, careful. Howard was just made Man of the Year.
Howard Cosell was the Cleveland Man of the Year, and somehow it just seems logical to me. He did. No, he said something very nice about Cleveland on the air. But we do have the Columbus Clippers. As a matter of fact, we have them on tonight at 7:30, right after Art Russ Jr. does his sports talk show. And that kind of brings us up
That's
to date.
it, except we're forgetting Joe. We can't do that.
Joe Nolan is standing at his truncheon there, his stanchion, or whatever they chain him up to, with WABC Shadow Traffic. We got a lot of traffic this time, I hope?
No.
No?
On July 17th, 1980.
Yes.
This traffic reporter came to this microphone.
That's true, as a matter of fact.
Time.
Absolutely
Indeed.
right.
And one of the funnier things that you did that I heard on the radio was when Jack Packard said his real name at 6 o'clock in the morning one day.
Bernie Wagonblast.
He said, Bernie Wagonblast, and you, for the first time I ever heard you, well, today I found that it happened a lot, but you lost it.
I did.
You laughed. I remember that one.
I shouldn't laugh at people's names. I mean,
No. You laughed because he said his, and you said, Bernie, let it out. You just started laughing.
Well, that's funny, but you see, I can't ever make fun of people's names. See, you want to know my real name? I'll tell you my real name.
Go ahead.
My real name is Daniel Trombley Ingram. That's a French-Canadian name.
Yes.
Because my grandfather was French-Canadian on my mother's side. And I once took a trip, went to the Hotel Frontenac in Quebec.
The Sherry Frontenac.
Yeah, and went there and spent a weekend there, had a wonderful weekend. And the first thing I did when I got into the room was look for my roots. I went to the phone book and found pages and pages of Trombleys.
Really?
It was wonderful, yeah.
Truly amazing.
Yeah, okay. Now tell me some traffic goodies.
Transit Authority says that everything is okay except for the 2, 3, 4s, and 5s, which were tied up before. Southbound Cross Island Parkway, heavy from the Long Island Expressway, the Union Turnpike, a 2-vehicle accident there in the right lane. And that's it. Everything else is just absolutely fine. So, Mr. Ingram, sir, happy anniversary once again.
Thank you.
And I am Joan Nolan with WABC Shadow Traffic.
I do thank you kindly, sir, and I thank you, Rick James, because I tell you, your contribution today has been enormous. I've never seen so many sheets of yellow newsroom paper since something major happened outside this place, and that's an incredible amount of work you've done. I really appreciate it.
I may have gone over budget on the paper. Could be grim for a while.
You mean I'm going to have to read off towels again?
Well, while we're thanking people, I want to thank Joe Weil, who prepared the current day newscast, so I could be in here listening to this. Otherwise, I would have been forced to call in sick and listen to it at home. I wouldn't have missed it.
Thank you, Rick. Really appreciate it. We're going to go back to, it's another disco tune. It was 1975 when it was the #1 tune of the year.
Happy 20th anniversary to you. Happy 20th anniversary to you. 20 years of Dan Ingram on WABC.
Oh, come on already. We got a lady on the telephone right now who called me all the way from Los Angeles, and I am absolutely flattered that she called. Hello, Dionne Warwick.
Hello there, Dan Ingram.
I'm fine. How come you're calling all the way from Los Angeles?
Well, I figured that if you're going to celebrate 20 years of doing anything at all, you might as well be congratulated.
Well, I appreciate that, lovely lady.
Oh, goodness. It's really a pleasure.
Well, I thank you for calling. It's awful nice of you to do that. I hope you... What's that?
We're going to do this again in November, you see. I'll be celebrating my 20th then.
I'll call you wherever you are.
Oh, you got a promise?
You know it.
Okay.
Drop me a note and tell me where you're going to be so I can call you.
Well, let's see. In November, I should be... might be on the East Coast. You never know. I might just come on up. We'll do something together there.
I think that's a great idea. And I tell you what, I won't even call collect.
Okay.
Thank you for calling, Dionne.
My pleasure. And happy anniversary, babe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Now that is a real artist, a real star, Miss Dionne Warwick. I'm very flattered. I had no idea. All the way from the coast yet? That's really incredible. A couple other people did that too? Were they on tape? Oh, okay.
Hello there.
Hello there.
I'm Purvis Jackson of the Spinners, and I'd like to congratulate Mr. Dan Ingram on his 20th anniversary. I would also like to compliment you, Dan, on your fine standards of broadcasting over the years. It's unique, and may you enjoy many, many more years of success.
Thank you very much. One more? Oh, good.
Hi, this is Karen Carpenter.
And this is Richard Carpenter.
And we're just calling to say happy 20th anniversary to Dan Ingram. Congratulations.
And may they be 100 more.
Yeah. Bye.
Oh, mercy. 120 years. And hello. Do you remember back before we had video? Right. Oh, well. I have something for... What do I have up next? I've absolutely forgotten. Oh, yeah, a record by the Manhattans. We did our first live concert just about a year ago with the Manhattans, and their tune in 1976 was the #1 tune of the year, and it went something like this. Remember?
This has got to be the saddest day of my life.
Oh, that's nice. Let's kiss and say goodbye. Manhattan's taking you back all the way back to 1976, which is a little frightening. It was 5 years ago, and you think about it. There are a lot of people who consider themselves jingle freaks. They are people, and if you haven't been in radio, you know what a jingle freak is. They're people who record jingles and collect jingles, and they're fierce about it. The only jingle freak I know who really went straight and got into business and became a guy who produces jingles is one of the best in the business. He owns a company called Jam. It's in Dallas, Texas, and his name is John Wolford, and he does our jingles for us. But before he did our jingles, there was another guy who had a company called Pam's. Very similar sounding name, but totally different. His name was Bill Meeks. Also a very talented guy. He's working in Nashville now, producing records, and I hope making a fortune. I haven't talked to him in a long time. But he came in one day, and, I'll tell you what happened. I did this on the air, and it'll explain itself, because he took this and put it in his Christmas tape for his production company. And this is the way it sounded.
Sitting in our studio with our show today is a representative from Pam's Productions, which is a firm which records our jingles in Dallas, Texas. And the Pam's people, he can't hear me in the control room. The Pam's people don't know that we use only one or two of the many, many jingles they recorded for us. So we're going to turn the speaker on and give him we're going to play a medley of all the jingles I almost never use. Okay, let's do it first. We used that for a while, and then went out of style, and we had this one. We have never used have this one here. Never use this at all. Not once.
Gonna treat you right. 77 WABC. Let's have some fun.
Southwest accent. Anyway, then there was this one. Never used this once. Never. And then there was this one, of course. And then, of course, there's this one which we have used.
WABC, New York.
This is news.
And he took it good-naturedly, and of course he put it in his Christmas tape and sent it all over the country. And now, because Jingle Freaks, I think it's about time they heard some jingles without a whole lot of stuff on top of them. I'll play about 20 or so jingles and drive my engineer crazy because we don't have that many. So for all Jingle Freaks, so you ready if you're a Jingle Freak? You got your machine going? Here you go.
Go, go, Dan Ingram. Go, go, go. Dan Ingram. Music power.
Big Dan, gonna treat you right. 77 WABC. Let's have some fun.
That's the one.
He's in.
Big Dan.
He's on.
Dan Ingram Electric Radio Theater is on the
Dan Ingram. He's the top cat. Dan Ingram. You're in with
Big Dan.
Dan Ingram, Music Radio, ABC, Dan Ingram.
Big Dan.
WABC. Wednesday.
WABC's Dan Ingram Show. Dan Ingram, WABC.
Let's go, 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 go.
WABC's Dan Ingram Show. Dan Ingram. WABC's Dan Ingram Show. WABC's Dan Ingram program. WABC's Dan Ingram program.
Ingram's 20th, Friday at 3 p.m. on New York's radio station, 77 WABC.
I think you played a chord at the end there. I love that. I would like to thank you. That's enough. That's Frank D'Elia and George Musgrave, who you cannot believe how fast they were. They worked faster than a co-ed in heat. That was incredible. That's really beautiful. I haven't never seen so many machines open and close. They all need to be queued up now, right? Is that okay? We have no more jingles for the rest of the show. In the meantime, we do have some music for you. Andy Gibb, and I Just Want to Be Your Everything. Number one tune in 1977. Just Want to Be Your Everything. Andy Gibb on WABC.
WABC.
Oh, I'm salivating. That's wonderful. It's 5 minutes before 7 o'clock. I have to do that. The most important thing ever happened to me, ever happened on the air, and it was a whim. And a lady I'd been dating for some time happened to be sitting in the studio for the last half hour of the show. We were going out that night, and this is what happened.
Special now. You take the music all the way out, please. All the way out. Jeannie? Yes. You've been sitting here for some time, and I love you, so would you marry me?
Yes.
Thank you. You can bring the music back up.
Splice went through. Right.
WABC, New York.
Thank you very much. That's enough. The splice going through, the music at the end there is kind of significant because we got spliced after that, and then came Michelle, and then came Christina, and who knows what's around the corner? You never can tell. I'd like to play one final record. It was the number one tune of 1979, and this is the record I'd like to leave you with. I'd like to play the whole record, but I really don't have time for it. But I do want to tell you that at least I have survived. There are too many people to thank to get all our names in for all the work that went into this show today. This is the hardest I've worked in about 10 years, frankly, and I loved every minute of it. I'd like to thank Al Racco for making it possible, Jay Clark, our operations manager. Al is our general manager. I'd like to thank, yes, indeed, I would like to thank the entire A-team, the engineering staff who have made this whole thing possible. Steve Goldstein did more to get this thing on the air than I think he should have done. He did an incredible amount of work. Thank you. I'm sure I've left out 100 names. But for all the people who have wanted just once for me to play my closing theme without talking over it, because you can't get it. It's out of print. And I'll tell you the name of it. It's Tri-Fi Drums by Billy May from an album called Wild Stereo Drums. I'm going to play the closing theme, and I will say goodbye first. Goodbye first.
Junior Sports Star on 77 WABC.